Anyway, I'm drinking hot chocolate today. And I want to tell you this, right, because this is the hot chocolate from Hotel Chocolat, and they've changed their packaging. And guess what? This is there not a more desirable sound than this? Oh, how awesome is that? Everyone's hot chocolate should open with that sound. Wait a minute, one more time. It makes me happy every time I open it. Who needs alcohol when you can have a box of hot chocolate that sounds like that? So, still, no Joe, not Pringles. Good quality, 70% hot chocolate. Like, that's good for you. Makes you perfect in everything. So anyway, we had a long discussion today about a load of subjects that we could cover. And I've grouped them together. And some of them we're going to cover next week anyway, and I'll tell you a bit about next week later. But one thing that came up really strongly today was stuff around emotions with alcohol. Now, some of you are dealing with loads of little mini crises. Some of you are dealing with just the fact that it's getting colder and it's wintry, and you're feeling a bit more and tense and etchy. Some of you aren't feeling as happy and bouncy as you think that you should be. And some of you are already worrying about Christmas. People, it's like weeks and weeks and weeks away. So I thought I'd talk a little bit more about emotions, because we talk about this all the time, about living life in high definition. And we sort of know what that means, but we also don't really. And so I wanted to talk about that a little bit more. Now, I think it's really clear for me, and it's probably really clear for many of you, that we've dealt with most of our emotions probably over the last 20 years through the prism of alcohol. And there is some received wisdom that says that you stop developing emotionally when you start drinking, because the minute you learn that a drink is a response to an emotion, rather than dealing with the emotion, you stop learning about how to deal with emotions and sit with and have emotions. So there's that really, and I think there's a lot to be said in that, because I've dealt with every emotion since the age of about 14 through picking up a glass of something and drinking rather than dealing with it. And the most stark thing for me when I gave up was the fact that I had to sit with my emotions. I'm just going to check, can everyone hear me? Can everyone hear this? You all have to buy this hot chocolate now. Can nobody hear me? Everyone can hear me. Right, I'm just carrying on then. So we've learned how to deal with our emotions with alcohol every time we've had them for probably about 20 years. And then what we've never done is learn to sit with our emotions and actually deal with them. And by not dealing with them, what we've not ever done is learn some emotional resilience. And that's actually quite important, because now that we're starting to feel emotions, we've got no bloody skills at doing it whatsoever. We're suddenly confronted with these things that feel overwhelming and we're not quite sure what to do with them. And we've got no experience, no practice, we've got no framework, because our answer was always to reach for a bottle. So part of living life in high definition is the fact that you're feeling every emotion. You're feeling every impact it has on every part of your body. And that can be a small emotion from having had a stressful day, all the way through to dealing with really difficult emotional milestones such as bereavement and other things. And it's probably quite hard to calibrate those emotions as well when you're newly not drinking, because you've never dealt with any of them. So at the minute, they all feel like this, and you want to just do something to get rid of that feeling because it feels like this. And in amongst all of that, of course, are also some emotions that are about great joy. So some of the time after I gave up drinking, I was like the happiest person in the world. I thought I could cry, because I was also feeling joy in the same way. And it's probably really hard to know that you're feeling the joy, because negative feelings are so overwhelming. But it's worth sitting down and reflecting, have you had some real high joyous moments as well as some really low ones? Because that might teach you a little bit about how you're navigating your new emotional landscape. And this is a new emotional landscape for you, which is why you need to buy small cat cups. So what does this mean? Now, if giving up drinking was really easy and all of this was just like a walk in the park, everyone would be doing it. And the reason why most people fail at it is because they hit this life in high definition feeling and don't quite know what to do. There's a whole set of things and a whole set of tools that we've just not used in the past because alcohol was just the fix it all. And now we have to deal with them. And so the reason why lots of people give up is because they hit the fuck it button the minute there is a sign of any sort of emotion that begins to feel hard to deal with. And I'm really sorry, Lottie, because your daughter's going to hear that in the car tomorrow morning. But we don't have an emotional toolbox. Our emotional literacy has been stunted and we haven't built up the tools that we need. And so, like everything about changing your drinking, this is going to take practice. This is going to take effort. It's not like just a magic wand that you can wave and, oh, that's okay, I can deal with life in high definition now. I can tell you in full confidence that even 4 years after giving up drinking, it's the emotional things that I've not yet dealt with that really throw me a curveball and make me think, why am I bothering? This is all too difficult. Why don't I just give up? Why can't I just be normal like everyone else? Stamp, stamp, stamp my feet and try and go off and hide in a room and close the doors and all of that sort of stuff. And I'm not going to have it fixed in 4 years because I've spent 20 years ignoring all that stuff while all of those, non-drinkers or very moderate drinkers were off dealing with their emotions. I was just, caning it with a glass of red wine instead. It's a really expensive way to impact on your life, drinking red wine rather than dealing with your emotions. We need to start building some emotional resilience. We need to start understanding these emotions that we're feeling and realising that A, this is normal, and B, this is a new set of skills that we need to build, and that we can't let that knock us off course. We need to recognise our emotions for what they are and begin to sit with them, which is so much easier said than done, right? Because, even now, UC will tell you I have the most amazing strops when I can't articulate myself properly and I want to run away and I stick my headphones on and I'm a complete and utter bitch, quite frankly. So I still struggle with dealing with those emotions. And what's worse than not being able to deal with those emotions is I know I'm not dealing with those emotions. I know I should be doing better and I know that I'm better than this, but I still can't deal with it. It's so overwhelming. And so not only do you have to deal with the fact you can't deal with the emotion, you have to deal with the fact that you're being a twat as well. Oh God, life's hard, isn't it? So I was going to talk to you about what we do about that. So I have some notes here, which is why I'm looking. So I'm not like, So I think one thing to recognise is part of our drinking has probably come from the fact that we've been hiding all sorts of emotions, and probably is why we're stuck where we are. The reason why we might not have, as Shay says, put the big girl pants on in the past and dealt with our drinking is because we were frightened of this emotional landscape we're going to have to navigate. And so, understanding that this is part of the process, and understanding it was our lack of being able to deal with emotions that got us stuck in that cycle of drinking that was part of the problem, and dealing with those emotions now is part of breaking out of that cycle of drinking and that problem that we created for ourselves. So do understand that now that Lottie, that is nowhere near the entirety of my Marmite collection. UC won't let me put the entirety of my Marmite collection on the shelves. There's like hundreds of jars. Anyway, emotions. See what I'm doing there? I'm trying not to talk about emotions. Anyway, so your emotions got you where you are. Your only reaction to emotions was drinking. Now you need to break that cycle, and it's not going to be easy. And there are very strong emotions that at this point in time you might be feeling. First of all, you'll be feeling the fear of change, even if everything else is swimmingly lovely in your life. The fact that you're going from drinking to not drinking is a massive change. You don't quite know what's coming along. You don't quite understand how your friends will react. You will have a natural anxiety and fear around changing your drinking because you're stepping into the unknown. But you know what, guys? That's a brilliant place to be as well, because you have felt the fear and you're doing it anyway. And this is a brave step that huge numbers of people would not have taken before. And you're not alone. It's exactly why you're here. So you might be feeling some fear and anxiety about change, but embrace it. But also know that in order to make change happen, you're going to have to put in some effort, and learning about your emotions is part of that effort. You may also have some anger and resentment. You may be angry that you can't drink normally. You may feel resentful about a partner who might still be drinking. You may be feeling anger about general things that are going on in your life. You may feel anger at the discomfort you feel because you're not able to have a drink when you normally had a drink, and you may feel angry because you're wanting a drink and that you should be able to resist it. And you may also be feeling angry because you want to succumb to that and you can't. So you will be feeling all of those things. And we'll come on to social anxiety a bit in a minute, Danielle. So you might be feeling some anger and resentment. You might be feeling some fear and anxiety. You may also be feeling some great joy. And like I said, don't underestimate that you may have some feelings of great joy. You're managing to, if you get through your first week, you've tackled a week without alcohol, probably for the first time in ages. It's a great feeling. And it won't just feel like a good feeling. It will feel like a great feeling. It will be sort of hyper. You will feel some relief at having escaped from alcohol and have got this far, and to realise that you can get a week under your belt or however long you've done. So there's some of that as well. You might have some excitement about the future and what it can bring, and that excitement about the future and fear about the future balance quite equally as well. You may be worrying about the relapse, whether you might hit the fuck it button. Or you might be thinking about the challenge ahead, because it's not easy. You know, I look at the challenge ahead of not wanting to drink hot chocolate all the time, and it makes me uneasy. It makes me feel like I might be a failure. So why bother even in the first place? That fear of failure is quite strong and overwhelming, and means that we may not even embark in the first place. You may also be feeling boredom. Boredom is an emotion. It's the fact that suddenly you would have created so much time you're not quite sure what to do with, and it feels weird to not have a lot to do, and to suddenly have time and not be sure what to do with it, and suddenly worry that you're a boring person because you're not sure what to do with your time. And you may also be feeling some loneliness. And we talked a couple of weeks ago about that difference between learning to be alone and loneliness. But without that companion in your hand, that bottle that you had, you may now be struggling for working out what it is that you do when you're alone, and how you create new friends and friendships in order to deal with loneliness, particularly if you're taking some friends out of your equation who you think might be quite detrimental to your journey. So those are all legitimate and quite normal emotions to feel. You may also feel disappointment, and this came up a bit from Joe earlier and a few other people, that there hasn't been this magic waving wand, and you haven't suddenly turned into an athlete overnight with masses of energy. You haven't lost tons of weight. You don't actually feel like $1 million woman because you've given up drinking, or man for that matter. You may be feeling some disappointment that you haven't seen as great changes as you've wanted. So already that's a massive emotional landscape that you're navigating without any tools and skills to having navigated those things before, which is really interesting and not surprising and not unusual, and you are not alone on all of this. So how do you... I keep saying so. I really don't like it, but anyway. My fear of saying the word so too often. So there are then two things to think about. First of all is what can be the dangers of those strong emotions, and the second is how you then begin to deal with them. So firstly, those emotions can be dangerous for you because they're highly influential on what you do. Emotions, they can move you to and from a very stable state to feeling very unstable, very vulnerable very quickly. And that could be a point where you feel triggered to want to have a drink because you just want something to change, and you know that alcohol can do that quite quickly. So it's a real temptation to go and hit the fuck it button. And you're also more likely to make poor decisions when you're feeling very emotional. And so you might make decisions about going out or giving in to temptation, or to doing something that then may also make you more vulnerable to hitting the fuck it button a bit later. So you might make some poor decisions on that. You can begin to use those emotions or the boredom or resentment that you feel as justification for hitting the fuck it button. It doesn't take much for that internal saboteur to go, oh, but you've had a bad, stressful day, and so was a dickhead, and your children are playing up, and I'm feeling sad. Oh, I deserve a drink. And coming back to that alcohol as a reward. And you could also, I do want to say that when you can also feel so joyful about how well things have gone, that you get ambivalent and you think, oh, it's okay, I've got it licked, I'm all fine. Maybe I'll just have a glass of wine on Friday night. And again, that's a really dangerous place to be as well. And you may take your eye off the ball and stop investing in those things that you need to put some time into. I've got it licked. I've dealt with that. I've dealt with a stressful day. Boom, I'm perfect. And then also when you're subject to strong emotions, you can often feel out of control, which is, when I do that, putting headphones on and stomping off into another room. It's that feeling of lack of control. So I want to take myself away from the situation. Stomping off and putting headphones on is one way of doing it. But another is that we might want to go and have a drink because we're feeling just out of control. And so we want to magnify that so we can bring a drama and a crisis to a crux point, and make it all a whole load worse. So those are the dangers of not dealing with your emotions while you're still going through change. And like I said, 4 years on, it's by no means plain sailing for me. I'm learning a lot about my emotions and what a tit I am on a regular basis. And on a real regular basis, and how I wish I could deal with them a lot better. But I am investing time still in learning about my emotions and spending time thinking about them and at least reflecting and saying out loud, oh my God, I was a tit because, and I do know I need to, one of the things I know I need to do is, I feel that when people are giving me ideas for Club Soda and stuff like that, I take them as criticism, and I get really, really defensive, really ridiculously defensive for no apparent reason. And I even know I'm doing it while I'm doing it. And so I still need to express that I know I'm doing it and I am thinking about it and I am on a journey to deal with it. I just haven't quite worked out how to do that yet. And then I have to go and apologise to everybody for being a bit of a twat. But at least it wasn't because I was pissed. So there we are. Hooray! So those are the dangers of strong emotions. So how do you begin to build that emotional resilience? Well, you need to begin to learn to sit with your emotions and spend some time thinking about them and analysing them. And I must say that did get easier once I gave up drinking, because I began to feel myself more. That I feel everything about myself more. So the emotions were heightened. But then, because they were heightened and not dulled, it allowed me to recognise that I was having a strong emotion. And it allowed me to use reason to start having a discussion with myself about the emotion I was having. So rather than not using reason and going for a drink before, I now had to sit and go, it's ridiculous you feel this way. Why is that person making you so angry? Why is their behaviour? I mean, I'd let things sit in my head for like hours and days, and it would keep me awake, particularly if it was when somebody I felt had treated me wrongly or unfairly. And I would sit and go, why am I letting this person not only treat me this way, but why am I letting this sit in my mind to such an extent that it's affecting my day job, it's affecting my sleep, and it's becoming something bigger in my head than it really is. They probably don't even know that they've made me feel this way, but I'm really blowing this up into something. I've got a lot better at dealing with that, actually, and a bit of mindfulness helped me with that. But I had to learn to sit with that emotion, recognise it for what it is, and really learn that this emotion isn't going to kill me in the same way as discomfort isn't going to kill you, and begin to think through the ridiculousness of the situation and begin to challenge my inner self with logic and ask myself questions. So the first thing that you need to do is to realise that you need to sit with that emotion, learn about it, because you can control your impulses and your behaviours and feelings. You can let things go and decide to put them on the train and wave them goodbye. Whatever analogy works for you, you can decide that rather than huffing about all day in your pyjamas and finished socks and being angry, you could actually talk to somebody about it and deal with that emotion a lot quicker and then be happier for the rest of the day. You do get to choose to be happy if you want to, and you can choose that by making some different decisions. You can make better different decisions if you're not pissed. It's as simple as that when you're trusting your gut. Understand your emotions and also the needs of other people. So that's a bit about having social awareness and realising that if your emotion involves somebody else, that you're not having that emotion in isolation. Somebody else may have said something that upset you. They may not even know they've done it. They may not have even meant it in the way that they did. It happens all the time on this group. They may have created a situation, and putting yourself in another person's shoes and realising that they didn't mean it in quite that way. So why are you making it into something bigger is really important. Or if somebody did say something that upset you, is it easier to try and deal with it now than to let it ruminate and make judgments about what you thought they meant? Really be able to put yourself in the other person's shoes and realise that you may be having a reaction that's completely disproportionate to the situation that's happened. And proportionateness, that's not a word, is it? But being proportionate is a really interesting area, because when I was drunk, I never had a proportionate response to anything emotional ever. And at least now I feel I'm beginning to level out into having more proportionate responses, because I'm able to be more aware of the other person as well as aware of myself. And that awareness of self is also important. So recognising your own behaviour, understanding that you have control over that behaviour, understanding that they're your thoughts and you can stop them escalating into something else by taking some actions to stop it is really important, and understanding those. So that's also really important. I'm just checking here about, just in case what anyone said. So I'm just carrying on. So having your own self-awareness and awareness of others is a really key part of that. Learning and using your gut instinct to begin to realise that other people, you know, most things in life are cock-up. They're not conspiracy. And other people have probably said things by accident or done things by accident, and they are reacting just as emotionally as you are. God, it's combustible, isn't it? I mean, I don't know how we ever managed to be on this planet altogether with such high emotions. Throwing alcohol into the mix makes that even worse. The other skills that you need to develop are around relationship management and communication. So this means it's not just about being aware about the emotion that you're feeling, but then beginning to think about the communication skills that you need to build to deal with it. Being inquisitive, asking questions, being calm, asking to 10, not running off, sticking your headphones on and being in a huff. You know, beginning to have those open conversations. And that's probably one of the things that I find the hardest, is being able to have a thought and emotion, and rather than letting it go away and become something else in my head, stopping and articulating the feeling that I have and trying to have a conversation about it. We are so British about it. It's really terrible. But there are books you can read about emotional intelligence that will help you navigate some of this. And again, this comes back to the fact that you're investing in a journey. Changing your drinking isn't just about dealing with the discomfort of not being able to have a drink when you expected it, and not just about the social situations. It's about learning to live a life without alcohol and undoing all that hard wiring that means every time that you have an emotional response, you want to have a drink, and instead saying, I'm having an emotional response, my response to that is to deal with it. That's actually quite hard work, and that will take practice, because it doesn't come naturally. It doesn't happen overnight. You are rewiring your brain. So give yourself some credit, give yourself some self-love that you're doing something difficult, but also invest time in not only reading books about drinking, but reading books about emotional intelligence or having conversations. There are a few in the bookshop on the website, although UC's broken the website. It wasn't me this time. UC's broken it. But I particularly like this book. which is called The Dance of Intimacy. And there's also a new one called The Dance of Connections, which is all about how you invest in yourself in order to have better relationships and friendships with other people. So I highly recommend that. And I've got it to one side because the friend who gave this to me, I'm giving back to them. So do start putting some investment into this. You need to build some new emotional intelligence that's going to take you through the next 20 years. It doesn't come in a bottle. It comes through some hard work. It comes through some reflection. You may want to use some tools to help you do that, like some mindfulness and some just stopping and thinking. I find stopping and thinking actually harder than anything else. Wait a minute. Some chocolate will help. So, like I said, none of this is easy. These are emotions that, as you begin to navigate them, you realise that we are all quite bad at dealing with. And you will see, I watch it now, actually, when I watch drunken arguments in the street with people, and I realise not only are they dealing with an emotionally charged situation, pissed, but nobody's got the tools in order to have the discussion that they're having. And they're just making each other miserable, arguing in the street. And so we have such power to make our own selves miserable and bring someone else into misery with us, that actually being able to tame those emotions and be able to work with them is really good and brilliant. Richard mentioned The Art of Happiness is also a great book. We'll stick that on the bookshop as well. So, that's so again. What can you do? Well, first of all, recognise and manage your emotions. Allow them to be there. Analyse them, ask questions of yourself, ask questions of other people around you if they've shared that situation with you, and do manage that. Be able to find ways to quickly reduce your stress levels. So stress can be many, many things. It can be, I've had a really tiring day, and we call that stressful, or it could be that you've been in a highly charged discussion with somebody that you care about deeply, and your stress levels will be high. We don't always recognise when we're stressed. I realise that there's a big difference for me between work stress and emotional stress. And I can say the last 4 years I've been dealing with a lot of emotional stress. I can deal with the work stuff. That's, I'm used to that. But the emotional stress I found much harder. And knowing what technique you're going to pull on really quickly that doesn't involve alcohol is really important. It comes back to those distractions we talked about before. So, do know that you might go for a walk around the block, or you might have a bath, you might pull out some Haribo, you might have an emergency stash of something. Anything, as long as it's not alcohol. You might want to, count to 20, count to 60, count to 5,986 for all I care. You might want to do some mindfulness, but know what the things are that you can do to give yourself some space to think about the emotion you're having and to take some of that supercharged power out of an emotional situation. You want to, one other thing is that you can begin to feel that you can be confident that you can deal with emotional situations. I'm not drinking anymore. I'm feeling this emotion. Rather than it being, oh my God, I'm feeling this emotion, it's terrible. Go, I'm feeling this emotion, which is great. It means I'm now confident and more able to deal with the situation I'm in. I'm more confident and able to deal with the other people involved in this situation as well. I'm more confident and able to bring this situation to a resolution or to a better place or to a place where we can all feel happier. So begin to build some confidence and take comfort in that confidence that you can begin to deal with these things. Your gut instinct will improve hugely. My gut instincts have improved amazingly. I now trust my gut. I never trusted it before. And yes, Jasmine also points out that audiobooks are brilliant for this stuff when you're driving. All those books there, they're UCs. All my books are on this phone or on my Audible, and I listen to books as I'm going in the shower in the morning, as I'm going into work, all of those things. So yes, getting books that might help you. Podcasts and books are amazing. There's some amazing podcasts about emotions too. You need to develop some mastery of non-verbal communication. Now that you're not seeing the world through a slightly fuzzy, rosé tinted eyes, it is possible to begin to see the what's happening in front of you, the emotions that other people are displaying, some of the body language that people show you, you can begin to use that to strengthen your gut feeling. And that's really, really important. So take time to reflect and look and recognise. I really love books now that talk in quite descriptive ways about people, how people are when they're showing signs of non-verbal communication. But also for me, I was always too tired before to deal with anyone else but myself. Drinking is such a selfish thing, really. And so I was never able to take in any verbal cues from anyone else because I was just trying to keep myself upright and keeping my brain from being so fuzzy and focus on the words, let alone, the other things that people were showing me. So now I can actually deal with seeing what's going on in front of me and the verbal signs that people give. And that does mean you can deal with emotions better. It does mean that you can deal with people generally better. And the other thing is have a sense of humour, because we're all dicks sometimes, and it is possible for you to laugh at how you've reacted to a situation afterwards and see the humour in it. In the same way as I think laughing about some of our exploits when we were drunk is a good way to not feel total shame for our past, but to recognise that we had some good times, that we did some silly things. But you can now use that humour to also say, well, actually, I can't believe I dealt with that situation in that way. Oh, somebody sent me a really angry emoticon then. Don't know what that meant. But, we can begin to laugh at the way we deal with things. And that's a good way to then also have a conversation with somebody after an emotional event and start talking about what you've learned from it and go, I can't believe I rushed off and put my headphones on and was a complete idiot. And then go, I can't believe you do it either. Why do you do it every time? And it begins to help that conversation happen. A bit of humour never hurt anyone. No, and Alison, you're never a dick. Whatever. Don't believe you. Okay. So I've talked a bit about how you can begin to deal with some of those situations. The other is to be a bit more empathetic, and I talked about putting yourself in other people's shoes. But it is a lot easier to have empathy with other people when you are clear-headed. Actually, the word clear-headed has been used a lot on the group today, and actually it does explain very well how you deal with emotions when you're not drinking, which is clear-headed. And you can begin to empathise with other people. You can begin to say their point of view. You can begin to diffuse situations by using logic and by using a little bit of sympathy or empathy for other people. So you don't have to jump to judgments anymore because you're feeling defensive about the fact that you're drinking. You can begin to ask people questions to help diffuse a situation or to make an emotional situation better. You all guys all know what it's like to be non-judgmental because we're here, we're doing it in the group. And so, and it's partly why we come here. We come here to share those emotional situations because we know we won't be judged. Well, we've got that gift to do that for other people in our lives and not judge them as well. And that is an amazing gift to be able to bring to any emotional situation. To be able to look calmly, be able to use logic and use a bit of empathy to deal with a situation. I also talked a bit more about recognising stress. It's a really nice chocolate. Being able to recognise stress, because like I said, I didn't realise for ages that there were two types of stress that I had after giving up drinking. One was work stress, which I'm sort of used to dealing with, but I hadn't really recognised emotional stress because from dealing with new emotions that I'd never really dealt with before. And so it may be that this living life in high definition is just making you generally stressful anyway. So you need to learn how to let go of that, which I really feel like I'm not the qualified person to do this because I've been very successful apart from being able to recognise that I am actually suffering from emotional stress. So you may be feeling that when it comes to some situations, you still feel very fuzzy-brained and that you're not clear-headed, and that's because you're stressed and you can't deal with a situation. You might get an upset stomach, you might get headaches, you might feel really tense, Some of you talk about not being able to sleep. Some of that may be because you're dealing with stress around all the new things that are being brought up right now, and you're not quite sure how to deal with them because they're new situations and you've never dealt with them before. You may get butterflies in the stomach, you may have a loss of appetite, or you may eat more. I'm eating more at the minute. You might still become easily irritable or upset because you don't know how to deal with a situation, and these are all signs of stress. They're not signs that you should be drinking. They're not signs that you're failing. They're not signs that not drinking isn't doing you some good. They are signs of stress, and it's quite possible that you will be dealing with stress because you've no longer got that great big spectre of alcohol that just washed all these things away and pushed them to another day. We always push those things to the future us to deal with. Well, guys, the future you is now here, and you are now having to deal with them. So that is going to bring some levels of stress. You may also feel a little bit depressed. You may have some negative thinking. You may not be so interested in sex. All of those are signs of stress. You may be feeling angsty and a bit, I don't know what to do because I can't drink some alcohol, but I'm angry and I'm upset. Deal with it. Put your big girl pants on and deal with it. This is part of your process. This is normal. This is something you can deal with. This is something you can change. This is something that daily practice can really help you do. So do some mindfulness, do some exercise, find something to deal with that stress. I know full well that I need to go to the gym to deal with mine. I know I need to do some exercise. I know I need to get out of the fact that I keep thinking I'm too tired to do exercise, when actually the thing that will stop me being so tired and stressed is to do some exercise, right? So we all know this because we're not stupid people. But there isn't any excuses. There's nowhere to run and hide anymore. You're going to have to do some of those things that will help you dissolve those stressful situations. Of course I knew that, Alison. Of course I knew that really you're a dick sometimes. It's okay. And yes, Jasmine's right. Meditation. So let me come on to some other things. I think there's a really wonderful thing that you can achieve at the end of all of this, which is the fact that you can become a master of dealing with conflict. You can begin to learn enough about your own emotions that you can dispel any issue in a room, even if it doesn't involve you. And I think that's a really powerful goal to work towards. We often look at goals around weight loss and clear face and non-yellow eyes and all those things when we're changing our drinking, but we never actually put emotional things at the forefront and say, well, actually, at the end of my first year of changing my drinking, I want to be able to deal with stressful situations by realising, A, I can handle them, and B, I make them worse sometimes, and C, I can actually make them better. So that's one element. You can also then deal with your anxiety better, and even though it doesn't feel like it, even if you've got social anxiety, and that at the minute it doesn't feel like you can deal with that, you can, because you can begin to analyse what it is that you feel a bit more. And I'm really sorry that I'm not going to deal with so much with anxiety today, but I will pick it up at another situation, because I do recognise that it's a slightly different emotional landscape than just all of these other things that I've piled into one bucket of emotions. So I haven't forgotten that request. You can develop a self-understanding that will really make you resilient for the future. And as life changes, you'll be able to be more flexible and more malleable. At the minute, we're frightened, that we're going to be too far away from a bottle of wine for a few hours. Can you imagine? We used to revolve our whole life's daily infrastructure around, whether we'd get to that drink at the end of the day. How self-limiting is that? Actually developing yourself emotionally will open you up to being far more resilient to change and far more braver about decisions you make in the future. So it's not unusual that that you begin to feel that changing your drinking hasn't created this great excitement and load of epiphanies. It actually feels quite tiring because you're probably dealing with lots of emotions. And Jo brought up earlier that it's, why is she not skipping through the daisies in the field like everybody else? Why is she feeling a bit crap? Well, in part, that's because once you give up drinking, you can begin to feel everything about yourself that you never felt before. Like, I feel my menstrual cycle. Like, I know it now. I never knew it before. I feel where my aches and pains are. I now understand that I have headaches. They're not all just associated with a hangover. I actually sometimes have headaches. You begin to feel yourself physically a lot more, and it may be that you've got some issues to deal with that have been there all the time, and that now you're uncovering them. It's like the princess and the pea. Your real issue is the pea at the bottom of the mattress, but you were always asleep, slightly drunk on top of that mattress before, and could never feel the pea. Well, now you can feel the pea, right? And so, and that may be a physical thing, but it may also be about emotions. And it may be that you've got a combination of the two, that you now realise there's some physical things you need to deal with, that you also have some emotional baggage to deal with, and that also we're all bloody getting older and it doesn't get any easier year on year. So all of those things combined, it means that you've got a self-awareness that you've never had before. So that oomph to change, Joe, I really am feeling for you. It's not that I don't want anyone to think that the journey they've gone on isn't worth doing. It just means that there's other stuff to uncover, to find what really makes you tick and where you need to go. And this is a journey, and where you're learning skills and where you need to develop further. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there, I think. I want to touch on anxiety in the future, which I am going to do. I know, I said feel the P in an ambiguous way. But I will touch on anxiety in the future. But I'm actually not here next week because I'm going on holiday, and I cannot tell you how much I am looking forward to this holiday. Talking about dealing with stress. I need a holiday. But next week you have got Helen back, who is a psychologist who wrote The Mob. And she will be dealing with a whole load of issues, but I'm going to give her a list of things that I'd like her to touch on. Some of those will be about setting goals for the longer term and what to do if you've fallen off the wagon. And also, if you've got anything you want her to touch on, because she's far more qualified than me, then let me know, put it in the group, and do all of that as well. I need to talk to the admins about who'll be looking after the Facebook group while we're away. We're not going to be in the middle of nowhere. We're going to be in the south of France with good Wi-Fi connection. So we won't be totally gone. But I am hoping to have some time where I'm not working. And so I can read some of the books on emotional stuff that I have got plugged for myself as well. Yeah, I should have told the admins this before I announced it on Facebook. But anyway, but you can all look after each other because you're all really good at it already. And Samantha's doing nothing because she sat on her arse with her leg up in the air. So she's got some time as well. So it'll all be all right. I'll leave it there. Do keep telling me about issues you want us to raise. I'll bring up anxiety and I'll also bring up some other health stuff in the near future too. All right, guys. Bye.